All right, let's dive into something pretty wild today. What if our history isn't just written in books, but is actually encoded in our DNA? We're going to unpack a fascinating document called the Scientific Indictment, and trust me, it makes some absolutely extraordinary claims about cosmic memory, a lost race of giants, and what it calls a great genetic downgrade of humanity. So let's get into it.
Okay, so the entire foundation of this whole thing rests on one, well, really radical idea. It's the claim that the universe isn't just a bunch of empty space and energy. It's information. It has a memory. It actually learns. According to the source material, if you can wrap your head around this one single concept, everything else that follows starts to click into place.
So how does the text even begin to build this case? Well, it starts by completely redrawing our map of the cosmos. The argument is that we're not surrounded by dead, empty matter. Instead, we're immersed in a living, intelligent field that literally remembers everything that ever happens.
And this is where it gets interesting, because the source tries to tie this concept to actual modern physics, specifically something called the zero-point field. Now, mainstream science usually sees this as the lowest possible energy state in a system, but this indictment reimagines it as this all-encompassing broadcast of information, and it claims our brains are basically the receivers tuning into that broadcast.
So what does this mean for something as basic as memory? Well, as you can see here, the standard view is that your memories are physically stored inside your brain, right? But the text throws a real curveball with an idea called Morphic Resonance. It suggests our memories aren't stored in us at all. They exist out in this universal field, and our brains just tune into them.
Now you might be thinking, okay, where's the proof? Well, the indictment doesn't just leave it there. It points to a few, let's say, unconventional findings as evidence. It brings up things like Dr. Emoto's controversial water crystal experiments, and it also cites Rupert Sheldrake's theory that once a behavior is learned, like rats solving a maze, it somehow becomes easier for all rats of that species to learn it no matter where they are in the world, as if that information got uploaded to the field.
Okay, so if we accept this idea for a moment, that the universe is this giant conscious field, the next logical question is, how do we plug into it? The text argues the connection point isn't just in our minds, but deep inside our biology. It calls this connection a ghost in our DNA.
To back this up, the text highlights this really mind-bending experiment by a biophysicist named Dr. Peter Garyaev. As you can see from the steps, his team apparently put a DNA sample in a chamber. But here's the wild part. Even after they physically removed the DNA, its energetic imprint, this phantom, stayed behind. It was still there, scattering the laser light just as if the real thing was still in the chamber. And this is where you see the huge leap the source makes from that experiment. It suggests that our physical body, this thing we touch and see, is just a temporary projection. It's a secondary expression of a much more fundamental, much more real, energetic blueprint.
And we're not just talking about some vague, spooky ghost here. No, the argument is that this energetic phantom is basically our operating system. The text even draws a parallel to the Ka from ancient Egyptian beliefs, and crucially, it claims this system can be influenced and maybe even reprogrammed using specific frequencies, especially sound.
All right, so once this whole framework is laid out, a programmable reality based on frequency, the indictment takes a sharp turn into history. It introduces a massive anomaly that it claims has been deliberately swept under the rug.
Think about it. You've got myths of giants in pretty much every ancient culture, right? The Nephilim, the Titans, the Jotun. Well, the source says, what if those aren't just separate fairy tales? What if they're actually fragmented pieces of a single global memory? Evidence of a very different version of humanity that once walked the earth.
And here's the thing. The text claims their abilities weren't magic. It was just physics. It makes an analogy. Just like a bigger instrument, say a cello, creates a lower frequency sound than a tiny violin, a giant's body, and especially their vocal cords, would have naturally been a powerful infrasound generator.
And this leads to what might be one of the most important claims in the whole document. The giants didn't use technology. They were the technology. The source points to these supposedly suppressed reports from the 19th century about giant skeletons being found with a double row of teeth, and it argues this wasn't some kind of weird deformity. It was advanced biological hardware for manipulating reality with sound.
Okay, so this is where the theory gets really audacious. If these powerful, sound-wielding giants were human 1.0, then what on earth happened to them? The text takes the biblical fall of man and reframes it not as a moral story, but as a deliberate technological act.
So the indictment takes the curse from the book of Genesis and reads it not as a punishment, but, get this, like a set of technical patch notes for a genetic downgrade. As you can see in the table, it alleges that each line corresponds to a very specific change, designed to create a weaker, shorter-lived, and probably more controllable human 2.0.
And he argues that the evidence, the scars of this downgrade, are literally inside our bodies right now. It suggests that what scientists call junk DNA is actually the deactivated operating system of our ancestors, and that our telomeres, the things that make us age, are basically a deliberately installed expiration date.
But here's a thought. What if that original, powerful code wasn't completely wiped out? What if there's a remnant, a sort of glitch in the matrix, still active in some people today, flowing right in our veins? And that glitch, that anomaly, according to the source, is the Rh-negative blood type. The indictment presents this as its final, really stunning piece of evidence, a biological mystery that it claims mainstream science still can't fully explain.
And check this out, because this is where the data gets really weird. While it's found in about 15% of people globally, that rate almost doubles among the Basque people in Spain and France. And what's interesting is that they have a totally unique language and genetic profile, suggesting they come from an ancient, really isolated lineage.
So the source pulls all of this together and says, look, this is no accident. It alleges the R-negative blood type is the actual genetic signature of the original, pre-downgraded human. It even reframes the dangerous immune response in some pregnancies as a kind of biological firewall, where the original human 1.0 code recognizes the human 2.0 version as something foreign.
So in the end, the scientific indictment isn't really about giving you all the answers. It's more like a challenge. It connects all these incredible claims to push for a complete reevaluation of history, biology, and consciousness itself. And it leaves us with the really provocative question you see here. What if the most profound truths about who we are have been hidden in the very places we've been taught to never, ever look?